In the days of yore, the story is told variously, but the core is this: a great bird, symbol of beneficence and care, hovered over the community for 500 to 1,000 years. But at the end of that period, according to the rules of the cycle of life, the bird would then go where there was burning a great fire, and the old bird would plunge himself into the flames, and alas, his ashes would be taken away. But out of the ashes came another great bird, like the bird that had sacrificed itself. And the story says, over and over, one bird gives his or her life, and another bird rises up to hover over the people that their lives might be fulfilled. Now let me explain why I think it is that the great bird phoenix is placed here in the cathedral. It is because when God senses that the people of the covenant are not listening, are not fulfilling the dream that God had at the dawn of creation, when they seem not to have the commitment to embody the fullness and the wholeness that was of God, God's own self, that if God says the people can't hear, then maybe they need a visual object. I'll show them something, and perhaps then they will hear. You will remember this happened to Ezekiel. Ezekiel saw the wheel way up in the middle of the air. And remember, Ezekiel also found himself in a valley that was full of bones, just a picture. And Zerubbabel, asking for guidance, saw a lampstand made of gold with 7 candles around and 7 spouts. So that's the case. When God wants to say, do you hear me? Are you getting it? Will you do that which has been given to you as the path of blessing? And so we see the phoenix. I want to ask you before I share, in regards to the possible message from God, what do you see? I see an assortment of items and pieces. I see a bird made with these pieces, and a design emerges from the pieces. I see the beauty and power of the interconnectedness between the pieces. That is what I see when I look. But my inner eye sees a lot more than that. The inner eye, remembering, sees the great eagle on whose wings the people of Israel were brought out of the land of bondage. And I also see a somewhat smaller bird, but imagination expands it. There is a raven, and then there is a dove. I see those birds as well. But as I see those birds, I see something else that I think will matter to us. In regards to Noah's time, where the raven and dove played a part, I see water rising. It had rained 40 days and 40 nights. And as the water rose, coastlands began to yield to the advancing waters that had gathered. And the water kept on rising and kept on rising until the text says the earth was fully colored, covered by the waters. I'm concerned about the animals that are somewhere in the ark. Robert McAfee Brown said that they couldn't have stood the stench on the inside if it were not for the storm on the outside. I see all of that, but the thing that matters to me is, look, the earth has been drowned. And so, for a period of time, there could be no sight of earth. But then, the waters began to subside. And as the waters subsided, that's when the raven was sent out and came back, no water, no place to land. But then, after a trip or so, the dove came back with an olive branch in his beak. That was a beautiful moment. Ecologically, let me tell you what else I saw. When the waters began to recede and could breathe again, I saw the sunshine, aided by the firmament, come down and kiss the earth. And they lingered together until I feared that, well, no, they stayed together until offspring, verdant growth, plants, flowers, fruit, so that it is now clear to me that I must see forever, not just that, but I see a God who wills that in relatedness, each thing comes to its fulfillment. And in separation, each thing begins the decline into that which brings a curse upon the land. So now, I see, as I look at all the parts, I see nations, tribes, races, religions, communities held together by the power of love, tethered to the Spirit which makes them one body. Oh, wonder what would happen if this piece would fall. I know Mr. Bing would hurry, find it, get it back in place, and seal it so that it never happens again. And so it is with people. Anyone who falls, the watchful eye of our heavenly parent sees even a sparrow, and I know God watches me. I see something else. I see God. Isn't that strange? How do you see God there? I see God actually conferring the honor of authenticity upon each part there. And all the pieces fit. But more than that, I see God, when I see the way these things are connected, I see God as relationality itself, connectedness itself. I see God who in God's own being manages to abide in each piece, including us, and yet at the same time be the all. And I like to put it this way theologically. The allness of God holds all of us in the heart of the boundless allness of love. We who are separated by our individuality must know that we are gathered by the all. And in that huddle, we will live a life of sacrifice and care for one another. I will close my comments with what I think we need to do. I think each one of us needs to give thanks to God for being a piece of the great design, and that without us, the design would be inadequate and incomplete. I think we should give God thanks for the other, because without the thriving of the other, there is some diminishment, and I will not fill out their design, only that can fill that design. I think we ought to give thanks for that. But then there's another thing I think we should do. I think we should spend time recognizing that the fragmentation, the separation in the earth is an abomination in the sight of the God that created us all. And each of us should dedicate ourselves to do whatever we can to bring together the peoples of the earth. But not that. God, who is the allness of all, wants us to have a unity of understanding. The sun, the moon, the stars, the animals you bring in on the day when we celebrate the great Saint Francis, all of creation must be respected as the offspring of God's great design. And if we do that, there's one last thing I'd like to ask you to do. Every time you see brokenness, and recognize how that in some way diminishes the beauty of God's design, I want to ask you, every time you see that which is broken off, ask yourself, what can I do to help God complete the design God had in mind?